When a modern politician visits a church, a mosque, or a temple outside their own faith to make a public donation, we generally understand what's happening. It's statecraft, it's diplomacy. We don't assume they have suddenly converted to a new religion. But that basic understanding often vanishes when we look at ancient history. Take the Leiden Copper Plates. These are major artifacts from the Chola dynasty that recently sparked a massive debate in India. They get their name from where they were kept for centuries, a university town in the Netherlands. The controversy started because of one specific transaction recorded on these metal sheets, a formal decree by a Chola king granting a generous donation to a Buddhist vihara, or monastery. From that single piece of data, a viral theory was born. Articles and social media posts began claiming that because the king funded a Buddhist institution, the Chola dynasty itself must have been secretly Buddhist. This is the danger of the cropped frame. If you take an artifact with hundreds of lines of text and zoom in on just one sentence, you can make the past say almost anything you want. To figure out who the Chola kings actually were, we have to pull back. We have to read the entire document, line by line, to see what the rest of the metal actually says. Fortunately, historians and epigraphists painstakingly translated these exact plates decades ago. They published the definitive English record in 1938 in Volume 22 of the Epigraphia Indica. This photograph shows the incredibly dense, engraved script on the actual plates. Far more comprehensive than a simple receipt, the opening verses are direct invocations praising Lord Vishnu and Goddess Lakshmi. The second stanza shifts reverence to Lord Shiva, formally honoring Vaishnavism and Shaivism. The devotion only gets more specific. By stanza 12, the plates use a vivid, poetic metaphor. The text describes the Chola kings as bees hovering over the lotus feet of Shiva. It is the exact kind of intense devotion captured in this bronze statue of Shiva Nataraja, the cosmic dancer, created during that same cultural era. Then comes the genealogy. For nearly 30 stanzas, the document traces the royal bloodline. It connects the Cholas directly to the legendary sage Manu, and figures like Ikshvaku and Mandatha, placing them firmly within the Suryavansha, the traditional solar dynasty of Hindu scripture. The scribes even wove in broader cosmology, including a verse that references the earth being physically supported by the cosmic serpent Sheshnag. Once you read past that single donation, the picture becomes clear. The plates are anchored entirely in Hindu deities, mythology, and royal lineage. The idea that a secretly Buddhist dynasty would commission 30 stanzas of devotion to Shiva and Vishnu doesn't hold up against the physical evidence. But in history, you never want to rely on a single artifact. Does this dense Hindu imagery match the rest of the historical record, or is the Leiden plate a weird exception? To verify, let's plot these royal records on a timeline covering roughly a century of Chola rule. Alongside the Leiden plates, we have the Anbil plates from 961 CE, the Thiro Alangadu plates from 1018, and the Kanya Kumari inscription from 1070. Every single one of these massive royal records echoes the exact same narrative. The Anbil plates explicitly tie the dynasty to Lord Vishnu, while the Thiro Alangadu and Kanya Kumari records trace the royal line directly to the tradition of Manu. Zooming out to the macro archive reveals a consistent reality. Over decades of administration, the Chola kings recorded an explicit, unbroken Hindu religious identity, which brings us back to the question that started all of this. If they were so firmly anchored in Hindu traditions, why did the king order an official land grant to a Buddhist monastery? Because ancient statecraft operated on a grand scale. For an empire of that size, funding diverse religious institutions was a projection of imperial power, administrative tolerance, and civic duty. They were acting as patrons for all subjects under their protection. There is a distinct difference between a transactional receipt, the actual donation to the monks, and the holistic cultural identity established by the long, poetic invocations that precede it. When we reduce an incredibly complex, pluralistic society to a single data point, we strip ancient rulers of their actual political sophistication. We make them flatter and less human. History is rarely a clean, single-issue headline. Understanding the past requires us to read the whole document, embrace the complexity of the era, and resist the temptation to crop the frame just to fit a modern narrative.